Welcome, and thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome to episode number 13 in the series where we are modding the Squier Sonic series Bronco bass to make it as good as we can get it. In this wrap-up episode, we're going to talk about potentially replacing these tuners, the neck finish, and we'll provide some cost-benefit ratio analysis. Let's see whether or not that is all worth it. Here we go. No mod series would be complete without a discussion on replacing the tuners. Now I do have to admit that these tuners on the Sonic series are a significant upgrade from the Bronco series that came before the Sonic series. I also do need to admit that in filming these episodes, I have restrung this Bronco bass many times. These stock tuners have held up pretty well. At times, I've needed to tighten the set screws here, but overall, this bass has stayed in tune, and throughout all the restringing, they've held up pretty well. Now, in terms of the neck, in my original review of this bass, I did point out a small flaw in the finishing of the neck pocket. So let's go down to the shop, let's pull off some of these tuners, let's pull off the neck, and let's see whether or not these problems can be easily fixable. Here we go. Let's first start by examining the tuners that came on the Squier Bronco bass, but first we need to get all the strings off it, so let's quickly do that. Now that we have the strings off, let's take this tuner out and have a look at it. Now in the shop, I have a set of Gotoh 350 Reso lights. This was from another bass build that I had previously attempted. It didn't turn out too well, so I have an extra set of tuners that we can compare the stock tuners to. So if we put them on the scale, the Squier stock tuner, along with set screw and ring, comes to 61 grams. And if we put the Gotoh 350 Reso light on the scale, those come in at 37 grams. So quite a bit lighter. So measuring the diameter of the stock pickup hole, it is measuring slightly over half an inch, but not quite 9/16. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because if you look at the more popular aftermarket tuner options, you have options from Gotoh, so either the Gotoh 707 or the Gotoh 350 Reso light. And you also have offerings from Hipshot, which would be their 3/8 inch model. I'm going to put up the drawings taken from both of their respective websites, and both of them are suggesting drilling a hole for a 9/16 inch bit. And both the Hipshot and the Gotoh 707 are both advertising as being a 14 millimeter barrel size that goes in and screws onto the tuner. Now, as I previously mentioned, the hole on the stock Squier neck is smaller than 9/16. So, will a Gotoh 707 or a Gotoh 350 Reso light fit without modifications? Let's find out. So the barrel of this Gotoh 350 is unfortunately larger than the stock hole in the Squier neck. Now just for fun, let's turn the neck over and let's put the set screw in and let's see where this Gotoh tuner sits. So after screwing in the set screw, you will find that this Gotoh 350 tuner does not sit anywhere near the middle of this hole. The Hipshot and the Gotoh options will require modifications and some basic woodworking skills in order for this to fit on the Squier neck. Now, if you look at the shape of the Gotoh 350 Resolite on this Squier, I actually find that the tuner leaf is on the small side, proportionally, in relation to the headstock. So I think if it were left up to me, I would probably go with a paddle style tuner, which you are able to custom order, I believe, from hipshot. So their 3/8 inch model can come in a cloverleaf, a paddle, or their more contemporary, modern looking, lightweight tuner key. But I think for the overall vibe of this Bronco bass, I think the paddle tuners or lollipop tuners would probably look the best. But that's a pretty subjective visual thing. Now let's have a look at the neck pocket. Let's take this neck off. Now, as you can see in the photo, this neck pocket is actually pretty cleanly routed. But as I pointed out in my original review, there was, towards the end of the neck pocket, there did seem to be a gap between the body and the neck. It was big enough that I could put a bookmark through it. And now with the neck removed, you can tell that it looks like something was both depressed into it and pushed in, and there was some extra wood sanded away. So I think instead of making the entire neck pocket even deeper, I think I'm just going to put some wood filler in there just to build it up, and then I will, once everything's dry, flush sand it to make it as straight and level as I possibly can. Having put a straight edge along the rest of the neck pocket, the rest of it is perfectly flat. And if you look at the bottom of the neck, I'm actually very pleased to see that the entire back of the neck was finished, and it didn't look like they had attached a mounting apparatus to it, leaving kind of a rectangular, unfinished area. This really contributes to a better fitting neck pocket. Now, I had a previous comment on a video talking about the nut. This is a plastic nut, but I do have to say, whoever carved this nut and slotted this nut did a fantastic job, because this nut is slotted perfectly. You can make the argument that a different nut material will influence the tone. Better or not is, I think that part's subjective. I personally like bone nuts, and I've also had good experiences with nuts from Graphtec. This is not sponsored content. I've paid for everything I've shown you in these videos. But I am not skilled enough to slot a nut, nor am I skilled enough to get a nut to fit into the slot correctly, perfectly flush. So for me, if I wanted to replace the nut, I'm looking at bringing this to my local luthier or my local guitar tech, and then needing to pay for that type of service. But I think this nut right now on this particular instrument is cut perfectly. And I think, again, for me, it works perfectly fine right now, and I don't have a compelling reason to change it. Now let's talk about the neck finish. I will have to admit that the one part of the Bronco bass package that feels cheap is the neck finish. Squier does advertise this neck as having a satin polyurethane finish, and you can see it in the light. You can definitely tell there is a urethane finish on this neck. This thin urethane finish does feel on the cheaper side. I did consider refinishing this neck, and in fact my original plan was to strip the finish off this and then put on kind of a so-called vintage tint. In other words, making the neck look a little warmer, a little more yellow, and a little more aged. There is a problem, well, it's not really a problem, but it's something you need to be aware of. You cannot stain over a urethane finish neck. You have to completely strip and remove the polyurethane before any stain will take. And the problem with maple fretboards is that there's also urethane on the fretboard. So you need to strip everything off it. Now, that's easier said than done, because you need to be really careful around the fret edges and the fret ends. So if you use chemical strippers, first of all, the aerosolized chemicals from those paint strippers can potentially be harmful. The ones that work really well are the ones with the bad chemicals that can harm you. The more environmentally friendly, less dangerous chemical ones don't tend to strip as effectively or as well, so you need to end up either using more or spending more time scraping. So I think for this type of project, you would either need to use a chemical stripper or good old elbow grease and sand it all off. Now, that is a lot of work. You need the right tools. You need the right kind of shop area to do it. You need a good ventilated space. Otherwise, that stuff is bad for your health. Not to mention is time. If you are sanding a urethane finish off a neck, some of the corners and the curvatures you can't get an orbital sander into, or you really risk taking off way too much wood. So you're doing those by hand. And if you're not careful and you leave just a little bit of finish on, when you put stain on, it won't come out evenly. So I think for me, mostly from a time management point of view, because I've taken on a whole bunch of other refinishing projects for my house, I think refinishing the Bronco neck is going to have to wait. Now, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, I had a comment from one of the previous videos asking me how much money I put into all of this and whether or not I thought it was worth it. So let me break it down. So I think the version of this modded Bronco base that I'm going to keep after I reassemble this is the Stunt Double F-base version. And that was the version where I put a made in Japan Fender Precision pickup in here. And I currently have a Wilkinson bridge, still a bent steel style bridge, but I have the brass saddles on. Having tried this combination with all the different bridges that I've previously featured in the series, the brass ones came out ahead. And it beat out the threaded saddles, even though in that episode I said I preferred the threaded saddles. With this combination, the brass one sounded the best. Go figure. So the base itself cost me just under 300 Canadian dollars. This particular base came from Thomann, so I did need to pay for shipping as well, but I had that bundled with a whole bunch of other stuff, so it's kind of hard to really calculate shipping in that context. But if I were to have purchased this locally, it would cost me about 290 Canadian dollars for a brand new Sonic Bronco. The pickups, these came from a personal collection, so it's really hard to put a price tag on that. But if you were to buy, say, a Fender Classic 62 or any other kind of moderately priced precision drop-in pickup, you're looking about 150 bucks Canadian for a set of P pickups now. The EMG Geezer Butlers were around $150 as well. The bridge was about $40. The pickguard was made for me by a fellow in the UK, and after shipping, the pickguard I think came to around $70. The original knobs did not fit the CTS shaft sizes, so I did need to get some different knobs. These came from WD Music that I purchased from my local music store, so I think those are another $15 or $20. But the cost for a CTS pot in Canada is around $12 to $13 each, and the cost for a Switchcraft USA output jack is in the $8 to $9 range. So adding it all up, all the parts, not including the time I invested in this project, cost more than what I paid for the base. So a question that was posed to me in the comment section from a previous video was, would I take a modded Bronco over an off-the-shelf base in the $600 range? So that might get you a Squier Classic Vibe 60s Mustang. I would have to say, I would take my modded Bronco. Hopefully what I've shown in this series is that there's a lot of sonic potential in this Bronco base. And with the right combination of strings, bridge, pickups, and electronics, you can get this bass to sound quite different from the stock setup. To highlight that, I've compiled a series of different playing examples back to back so you can hear how different this bass can sound. Here we go. Thank you so very much for watching this video and for watching this series. I very much appreciate your viewership. There's a lot of sonic potential in this little Bronco bass, and if you are interested in a mod project, I think it's a great place to start. Catch you next time. Peace.